Hello and welcome to the BurnCast. I'm Brady Byrne.
And I'm Kim Cass.
Today we're looking at a book called The Blade of Voxia by author Whiskey Flowers. As always, any criticisms directed towards the authors and works that we discuss are exaggerated for entertainment purposes and are not meant to be taken personally. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show. Let's talk about The Blade of Voxia.
Yeah, and let's talk about Whiskey Flowers.
What do you think of that name, Kim?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a pen name. We get that, but...
Is it the worst pen name you've ever heard?
Oh, for sure. And it's insultingly bad. It's like a joke, but it's not a funny one. Like...
Whiskey Flowers.
And you know he didn't intend it. He's trying to make it seem cool, and it's not cool.
It does come off as supposed to be a cool pen name, yeah.
So we have Whiskey Flowers.
Yes, and we have The Blade of Voxia, and I don't know where to start with this one, because we've read a lot of books over the course of the show that have been frustrating. We've read a lot of books that have been confusing, in that it seems like the book that they wrote doesn't match the genre it's presented as.
Yeah.
You know, you got things like a sci-fi adventure, John the Mantis, turning out to be like a weird sexual fantasy with a robot and stuff like that. And so we've been confused that like the author has chosen to focus on certain things over what you would assume the book is actually about.
Yeah.
And this is no different. In fact, I was more confused by this book than anything else. And I would definitely say I hated it.
I hated this book. We've read books with worse grammar.
Absolutely.
I think this is in the top percentile, you know? This is up there with the, Hard Target, a fantastic little book. In terms of the way that it's written. And
I'm going to disagree with you there.
There are still mistakes. But I would say, like, grammatically, like, it's among the better books that we read.
No, it's not. So many times there are sentences that should have full stops, but they just continue with a comma.
Okay, true. But I still think that's better than a lot of what we look at normally.
Our standards are really low at this point.
Yeah, it is really low. Now, I will say that this book has the worst dialogue.
Absolutely. And it's 90% dialogue.
Yeah, it has the worst dialogue. It has the worst exposition. And it has the worst story. Like,
yeah, easily. And the worst characters, let's be honest.
It has a lot of characters, and by far the main character, we always say that the main character is an asshole, but this guy, Case and Vix,
he's awful.
This man is a piece of shit. Like, literally.
Yeah.
And I want to dig into something a little bit quickly before we go any further with it, because over the course of looking at these types of books, these self-published books,
yeah,
we've seen these trends, you know, and there are a lot of the same story coming through from different people. For example, werewolf romance. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of self-published werewolf romance books. And that is, I don't know why. I have no idea. But there's just so many of them, and it's just a huge cliche trend.
Yeah, and the other thing we see a lot of are these kind of, like, Lord of the Rings fantasy ripoffs.
Yes.
And that's what we thought The Blade of Voxia was going to be.
And we kind of thought, well, we actually haven't really done... Yeah, a lot of the time we try to get into a genre and we don't end up getting the genre because the book isn't what the genre is about.
Yeah, and we will stress that we don't go into these books hoping they're bad. We're looking for, like, the hard targets and, like, the all your ruins. It just so happens that they often turn out to be completely different than how it looks on the package.
Yeah. And so on the package, we've got The Blade of Voxia. Now, all of Whiskey Flowers' books are the same. They're all just like the Dragon Mage, the Lightning Mage, the Enchanter, the Seeress, the Mage of Mages. Like, they're all...
The Mage of Mages, too.
Yeah, they're all the same thing in slightly different settings. So you can assume that if we look at one of these books, you can pretty much say that this is what he's writing every time.
Yeah.
You know, in some form or another, it's basically the same thing. You have a completely overpowered main character who cannot be killed by anyone else. And also knows it too. So he's completely unthreatened by anyone.
But let's not deceive the audience into thinking that this is like an action-oriented fantasy book, because it's not.
Absolutely not.
On the cover of this book, you have a cloaked figure with like a red insignia on his back, and he's like looking at a castle.
Yeah.
Now, you think this is going to be like a fantasy adventure, combat-oriented, possibly war-themed fantasy story. But, okay, we've had sexual fantasies. We've had romantic fantasies. This is neither of those. What it is, at its core, is... how do we even describe it? I've never read something like this that is just so completely out of the realm of what it looks like. It looks like a fantasy adventure story, and even the synopsis talks about how this guy, Kaysen Vix, he's the last surviving member of his family and the strongest remaining mage of what used to be the kingdom of Voxia, and the brutal war from the Saucian kingdom.
It's the Saucy K.
Has ruined his life, and now you have to join Kaysen as he attempts to get revenge on the Saucians and the traitors they corrupted, and prove that magic, no matter how strong, is a match for the blade of Voxia. And that is not what the story is about at all.
No, not at all. No, it's about the difficulties of managing multi-partner relationships, and not just that, but the forced aspect of it. The people do not have a choice.
Yeah.
Where, you're forced into these marriages.
Basically, yeah, Kaysen is a part of this Voxian kingdom, and they go to war with the Saucians.
And lose.
They lose. And Kaysen is forced to marry some mage girl from the Saucian kingdom, and...
he's like a trophy husband.
Basically, yeah. In the Saucian kingdom, the person who holds the most wealth in the family gets to have as many partners as they want. So this mage woman is very rich, so she has like 5 husbands or whatever. And Kaysen is one of them, and he doesn't want to be.
No. But not only does he not want to be, but he's absolutely defiant in every single aspect of their relationship. I mean, you're being forced into something, but she's not exactly, making him do anything that is like outside of the spectrum of what you might be expected to do in a normal relationship. It's like, hey, can you please come with me to this social event? And he's like, fuck off. No, fuck you.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I can see that you're upset about it, but you're going to be in this situation for years and years and years. Like, why are you being such a cunt? Like, what? Like, I don't understand. But that's what I was saying with like the stereotypes. You got werewolf romance, and then you also get these harem stories where like people explore the idea of a harem, where you have multiple partners. Now, usually the books say that on the front, right? You get a werewolf romance book and it says, this is a werewolf romance book.
Yeah, you know what you're getting.
Or if it's a harem story, it's like, this is a harem novella, episode 64.
Yeah.
Like, literally. Yeah, and that's fine, because you're not picking up the book thinking it's going to be anything else other than a story about a harem, and if you want to read about that and fantasize about that, then go ahead. But if you pick up a book that's supposed to be about magic, and it ends up being a fucking story about weird
marriage life fantasy.
Yeah. And the second aspect of the story is it's basically schoolyard brawls.
Yeah.
Every time they rock up somewhere, it's shirts off, talk shit, get hit type mentality.
Yeah.
All the boys are just like rumbling each other in the yard behind the building.
And of course, everyone wants to go after Kaysen because he's the most handsome phantom warrior who ever lived, and everyone is jealous of him.
Yeah.
He's got super big muscles. All he does is work out, and he's invincible. He's a phantom warrior, so he can teleport through walls. He can teleport through people. He can basically do anything. He's never in danger throughout the whole story.
Yeah, it's so boring to read a story where the main character is basically invincible and knows it too.
Yeah.
Where's the challenge in that? Where's the conflict? There was no conflict in this story.
No. I don't even want to talk about pacing or structure as if like I could actually critique them, because this book has absolutely nothing going on for either of those, and it's not even worth digging into in any sort of serious manner.
Absolutely not. I do want to quickly jump into one of the first things I noticed, which is the weird blend of, you kind of look at this and it's like, oh, mages, that, you have this idea of mages and wizards and things like that they're always like learning in a sort of scholarly manner how to do the things they need to do.
Yeah.
And this, it's more like they still only care about who's ripped up, who's jacked up, who's got the biggest pecs, who's tallest,
yeah.
And it seems so weird and bro-ish, like back in the old days, they didn't really have this idea of working out. You like train as a warrior, but like the idea of working out and they didn't really understand that concept so well only until very recently in history.
Yeah.
And they talk about getting jacked up and getting good definition. You know, he's like, send me to the mines. Yeah, those miners have great muscle definition. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and they really talk about it. Like, Jayla, the woman he's forced to marry, is always like, oh, well, because I have multiple husbands, every week I go and stay with a different one. And Kaysen, that leaves you time to, do your thing and just like work out.
Yeah.
Like it.
And I want to also add that, Kaysen in the beginning of the story, he's not completely invincible. The normal mages, they can shoot him with lightning or ice or fire or whatever, and he's still vulnerable to that. He's pretty much, you would have to do something where, like, you trap him or outnumber him, because
otherwise he'll just teleport through the wall.
He just teleports, and you can't hit him. But if you do catch him or something like that, I don't know how you could lock him up, because he could just teleport out.
Yeah, and they make mention of that all the time. Kaysen is always just like, man, it sucks being in this shitty marriage. Like, I'm not in my own kingdom, and I could leave any time I want, because I could just teleport through the wall and slice the king with my dagger and do whatever I want and go to the mines and work out. It's like, why don't you?
You hate it here. What?
Like, and people ask him that, and his justification is like,
well, why?
Why would I?
Yeah.
I kind of have a pampered life being this woman's fifth husband, and I can work out every third week. It's so superficial, his motives and the things he wants.
So I also want to briefly mention one last thing about the mines, is that right in the beginning of the story, he's refusing his wife so much that the wife sends him to the mines to like try scare him to be good. So he goes to the mines and he's like, wow, this is really cool. Like, it's just a great workout,
Yeah.
It's just a great way to work out, to be honest. And so he's swinging his pickaxe, and he describes that he is mining so hard that the pickaxe goes red hot. Like, and I just can't.
Oh my God.
I had to stop there and just be like, okay.
It says, Kaysen focused on his power and started hammering away. Kaysen thought he had been going for close to an hour when his pickaxe turned bright red from all the friction and speed and shattered.
Fuck.
He's just like such a badass dude. He does all his minor work that takes everyone else like 24 hours to do. He does it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, he could just smash up the rocks, yeah.
The pickaxe is red hot, and he teleports back to the miner boss, and he's just like, I'm done with my work today. Like, this dude is your typical edgelord, phantom dagger wielding asshole.
But then mixed with like gym bro, like.
Yeah, and he's like super hot. He's got white hair.
Now, one thing that I find really upsetting about this story is that every time you think it's going to go in a different direction, and I'm talking specifically about the dialogue now,
yeah,
it ends up in the same place. No matter who he talks to, the other husbands, captains of the guard, his wife, his friends that he randomly meets out with all the time, just randomly, he always talks about the same thing, how his wife wants to sleep with him and he doesn't want to, and the difficulties of this inter-multi-partner like relationship, and it's like,
it's painful.
We just talked about this.
Not only is it talked about constantly, it's the only thing that's talked about.
Yeah, between any character.
Even as, like, Kaysen is about to go off and help the Saucian Kingdom fight some other war, and he goes off to, like, the training camp, and there are a few other warriors there, and instead of that being a story, like, where he has to go off to war and maybe we'll see him do some combat, all the guards at the training camp are like,
we want to talk to you about your wife.
Yeah, so I heard from your wife that you won't sleep with her. Like, is it because you're jealous of the other men? And he's, no, I don't give a shit. She can go marry those other men. I just want to, like, train and work out. Yeah. But, don't you want to make her happy?
I don't give a fuck, no, like, fuck. It's such an ass.
Yeah, and when you have something like that, that's like, I don't care about any of this at all. But the main character doesn't either. So just leave him alone about it.
Yeah.
But then he'll go off and he'll be talking to anyone. And they'll be like, I heard your wife, like, you won't sleep with her, right? Like, she tries really hard and, but she's part of a kingdom that murdered my family and I don't want any part in this. But don't you want to sleep with your wife? It's like, oh my fucking God. Like, why is everyone around him so invested in his love life?
Yeah, it's so strange. And it's also really funny because all of the characters, it's like this thing where, everyone's brother, Yeah. He just rocks up somewhere and someone will be like, is that Case and Vix? Like, I knew you from the war. Like, and it's just like, you killed my brother. And he's like, I don't give a fuck about your brother. And then it's like, shirts off, guns out, like. And then someone else will be like, oh, you're my best friend. And he's like, I got married to your wife's sister and we didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
It's like, what? It's so crazy. And the dialogue is so stilted and bad. Every time they ask anyone a question, they give a full explanation.
Yeah.
They're like, so what happened to you? And it's like, well, after the war, actually. It's like, no, and don't say the same thing over and over and over again to different people, please.
They almost go through this, like, Socratic form of asking him these questions. Kaysen is so frustrated in this marriage that he wants to go off and do this war shit so that he can just get out of the house. And
literally.
And he does that, and he meets these, like, people at the training camp, and they're like, oh, are you telling me that if you could get away with it, that you wouldn't have another woman somewhere on the side? I know how women both young and old threw themselves at the charming phantom warriors whenever they came to town. I doubt you were too young to take advantage of that. And even if you didn't, plenty of men did. And I know you heard the stories. And Kaysen's like, so what if I could? That still doesn't mean I want to be in a relationship like that. And if I were married, I would have respected my wife's wishes that she wanted it to be monogamous. And the other Phantom Warriors, like, assuming that is true, if you were already married and had the chance to woo a beautiful woman, are you telling me you wouldn't take it? If it were a man, I would, in the hopes of eventually winning him over with my charm and resources. And Kaysen's like, are you her friends or something? And they go on and they're just like, oh, but you can't run off from a marriage. You can be killed for starting up another relationship. I wouldn't have to run. Would I still get some money to start me off? You know what? That doesn't even matter. I could leave and feel free to pursue whatever relationship I wanted. And they're just like, oh, well, yeah, but she would have to pay you. And it's like, this is the whole book.
Yeah, this is the whole book. And it's conversations between Kaysen and multiple different people, usually in a group conversation, which I find extremely frustrating to read when the dialogue is so bad. So everyone's related. Everyone's marrying each other. Everyone's only obsessed with Kaysen Vix's marriage.
Like, the whole plot revolves around his marriage, down to where the people at the military camp are like, your wife knew you would eventually join the military. She knew living with one of the other husbands would be too much for you, and he was supposed to casually mention the military. You would eventually get fed up and leave, where we would meet you here to solve your problem once you see we are not the enemy. It's like,
what?
His wife, like, made a plot to put him with one of the other husbands he finds annoying so that he could casually mention the military, and then Kaysen would run off to the military and then meet the wife's friends so that they could talk to him about his relationship. Like, that's the plot. That's the whole book. Trying to get him to, like, understand how to be happy in a shitty marriage that he doesn't want to be a part of.
The other thing I find frustrating is that the scenes always go like this. They are just in a room and they just talk to each other.
There is no description of, like, where they are or what's happening. Even, like, the very few combat scenes are just, like, Kaysen blurred towards him and stuck his dagger in his throat, and then, like, that's the end of it. There is so much description about this guy's goddamn love life and how his relationship is working, and nothing about what's actually happening.
And there is no payoff. There's no grand realization that he's actually happy to be part of this family. He doesn't progress as a character. It is just nothing. It's so depressing because you want to go to, like, an amateur writer and be like, yo, just write a fucking simple story. Like, guy gets a fucking sword, kills the dragon, just keep it simple, keep it safe, like, don't take any adventurous.
Yeah.
Even do, like, he saves the damsel in distress and they live happily ever after. Why is that a bad thing to write?
Kaysen is the fucking damsel in this one.
Yeah, Kaysen is a fucking damsel with a serious fucking attitude problem. He's always talking about, like, war and respect and shit like that, and then he, like, meets someone that has lost a son, and he's like, fuck your son, he was a bitch. Like, and it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. He's talking to this guy at some function, and his mage is, like, getting mad at him. He's like, you killed my son! And before Kaysen even knows anything, his instant reaction is, fuck your son.
Yeah.
He says, I hope he's rotting in the pit while being skewered on 1,000 cocks.
Yeah.
And his wife is like, Kaysen, like,
what the hell?
And she's like, I'm sorry for your loss, Mage Ruford. My husband also lost people he cared for in the war, but it's in the past now. If there's anything that the Fabershires can do for you to help you heal, just let me know. And Kaysen's like, why'd you say that? He's like, I mean that shit. She's like, do you even know who his son was?
He's like, no.
No, and I don't care.
He just said it because he's an asshole.
And she says, Edgar Sartar spent most of the war healing people from both sides. He was against the war and wanted to help ease the suffering, a trait he picked up from a man you just insulted.
Fuck his son.
And he's like, so he was healing people so they can be healthy for the mines. You've said it yourself. It was war and he had to die. All of them had to die. And I don't regret killing any one of them, no matter what mission they had. They were enemy invaders and got what they deserved. And it's like, dude, are we supposed to think he's a badass? Because he's just an asshole.
He's such an unfaltering asshole. His assholeness doesn't decrease at any point. It's always at 100. Like,
even like the other slaves in the mines, because like Kaysen is in the mines because he wants to be there so he can get ripped up. but they've got all these slaves who are like hardworking and like it sucks for them to be there. And he's like talking to the mine boss, and the dude's like, oh, you used to help out the other mine members by like doing some of their work for them because it's so easy for you. Why'd you stop doing that? And he's like, oh, they were relying too much on me. Fuck them. They can get their own ore. I don't want to do their work for them. Like, even though it takes me 3 seconds to do it because I could just teleport around and obliterate my pickaxe by hitting it so fast. He's just like, fuck you, got mine.
It doesn't even align with his ambitions to be there in the first place. He's literally there to work out. Like, why does he care whose work he's doing? He's just smashing up fucking rocks. Isn't it all the same to him? But he's just an asshole, and regardless of whether or not it would help, he's like, I'm going to work out anyway, but I will not help anyone else. Even slaves that I have not hurt me in any way. Like, and I'm a slave too. I should relate to them, but fuck them if they think that they're going to get away on my fucking effort, you know? It's like...
Yeah, but like, my favorite thing is every time he has beef with someone, which is everyone he talks to.
Yeah.
Literally everyone he is so sour with, even if they're just like, hey, like, I heard you were a great warrior. And he's like,
yeah, what's it to you, bitch? Like,
yeah, they're like, oh, I heard you were the best Phantom Warrior around. And he's like, the Phantom Warriors are dead. Don't disgrace my family name. And then he fights them. Such an asshole. But one thing, he has this catchphrase, which he always calls people David Steele. Because, like, David Steele is your Benedict Arnold Phantom Warrior. He was, like, some traitor that they have in their history. And every time someone beefs with him, he's like, I see you, David Steele.
As if they would know who that is.
Yeah, and he's always like, don't call me a fucking David Steele or I'll teleport into your neck and rip your esophagus out. It's like, dude.
Chill out, bro.
It doesn't sound badass. He's always just like, these David Steele motherfuckers. Like,
yeah. Any of you David Steele looking ass motherfuckers, like, want to step up and get fucking blurred at, I'll beat the pit out of you. He says the same things every day. He's got he's got like 3 things. I'll beat the pit out of you. Don't come at me, David Steele, and see what happens. He banks on those 3 every time. Like,
yeah, he's just like fighting with someone, and he's like, I don't have anything to prove when it comes to my fighting ability. I can slap any of those David Steeles you keep around and they can't do anything about it. Like,
any of you David Steeles want to get slapped up? I'll slap.
Hold on, here's another one. So, like, he meets some other Phantom Warriors who are also kind of enslaved to the Saucians. And he's like, I don't want anything to do with your group. You're not Phantom Warriors, and having David Steele in there just sullies their legacy. Like,
don't group me with that David Steele looking ass. He's got beef with that guy, big beef. And I also want to bring up the fact that we already kind of talked about that he's pretty much invincible. And then to make matters worse, like 3/4 of the way through the story, when he's like fighting this other kingdom alongside his enemies,
yeah,
he discovers that the consumption of peppers actually allows you to see in the night and makes you invulnerable to any magic.
Yeah, that's a major plot point. The eating pepper makes you immune to magic, and this kingdom has been using it to fight the Saucians. And of course, Kaysen catches word of this, and he's like, well, his reasoning for taking the pepper isn't so, like, he can disappear into the night and leave the shitty marriage. It's just so that his annoying wife can't, like, levitate him.
And keep him in place.
It's so fucking stupid.
Man, you could have done a magic crystal. You could have done some powerful wizard's, like, super spell.
Yeah.
Or anything. But no, it's just the peppers. It's just these tasty little treats.
Yeah, and his wife is like, Kaysen, I can't believe you're taking that pepper stuff.
Yeah, you're on those disgusting peppers. And it's like, why would you not use the peppers?
Yeah, I don't want you to just have full control over me whenever you want. And she's like, I can't believe you would do this.
It's like, what? Why? Like,
it makes no sense. But one thing I definitely want to talk about is the other husbands.
Oh my God.
When they're first introduced in a giant exposition thumb telling you all about the Saucian
skip.
Yeah, skip all that shit. It's so boring and so blatant.
And so pointless.
Yeah, because none of that stuff matters.
No.
This isn't a political fantasy book. This is a fucking marriage book.
Yeah.
So it's explaining these three other characters who are Jayla's other husbands. She has sex with all of them, and they're not really supposed to know who the father is. And it talks about how, she hoped that the baby would inherit Percy's manners, and she would inherit, like, Bristol, the other husband's, knowledge of numbers.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not how any of that works, but whatever.
Yeah.
And they're, like, one quality people.
Yeah.
The characters are so surface level and basic. It's like, Percy was like the upstanding...
He's the polite man.
Who she takes to social functions. Then you have Bristol, who had impressed her during the transference of power by accurately remembering numbers.
A very useful skill to have.
Great quality to marry someone for. Like how much money or items were in Fisalinth and where they were all located. Jayla married him and hoped her children would inherit or be taught his knack for numbers. Her third husband was a baker. And Jayla had said she hoped her children would learn from him how couples should treat each other. And Jayla had let Kaysen know the only reason she was marrying him was not because her father picked him out, but because he was nice to look at.
Oh, great. So he's just the eye candy boy toy.
Yeah, and not only that, but poor Bristol. It talks about how, Jayla had let it slip one day that Bristol had the smallest manhood of the four, and that he really couldn't satisfy her. And it's like, because he's the numbers guy. He's the nerd.
Yeah, he's a nerd.
Nerds have small dicks.
Yeah, that's how it works.
And the badass white-haired phantom muscle dude.
Oh, his manhood is spilling out of his pepper's too big for the rest of them. He's got the biggest pepper.
Not only that, but they talk about how the phantom warriors are so in control of their own bodies that they can last as long as they want, and they can have as much sex as the woman pleases. That's this book. That's this whole fucking book.
And I found it sexist, but against boys and girls. I don't know how, but it was so bad. And I wanted to bring up that there's this chapter. None of the chapters are named except for one. I think it's chapter 7, and it's called Jayla. And it's basically the girls are all hanging out, and they're pretty much just talking about how long all the boys last in bed, who's got the, biggest dick, and
how Kaysen doesn't want to pretend to be her husband.
Yeah.
And, oh my God, the same fucking thing you've heard 1,000 times already.
Oh, and I was just like, honestly, this might be the worst chapter of anything I've ever read, and it's so sexist, and it's so bad, and it's so stilted, and the dialogue just makes you want to kill yourself on the spot, and it's so cringy, and there's so many things wrong with it on every level.
Yeah, as Jayla's like, aren't you even the least bit upset that all my other husbands get to sleep with me and stuff? And he's like, I don't want to talk about this. And she's like, what? This is the actual dialogue. Why not? Jayla said. I have womanly curves now. There are some nice hips under this dress, and just look at these breasts.
Oh, yeah.
And then Kaysen says, I feel so happy for you, but I don't take well to threats. She's like, what? I didn't threaten you. Like,
and there's so much cringy talk about curves and muscles. The guys are comparing wives and shit. Like, oh, you know, like Jayla, she's got some curves. She's got some nice curves, but not as good as like Rosie. You know, like Rosie's got some real curves. She's got those like motherly curves, and it's like. Any other dialogue, just no dialogue at all would be so much better. Why on earth? And no one talks like this.
No one does. And one of the worst scenes is when Jayla has a baby, and it's like one of the husbands. It's not Kaysen's because he doesn't sleep with her. But all the other husbands come in and they're like, happy to see this little baby. And they all come in and the baby's born. And Percy, the prim and proper dude, the instant she's born, he's like, we need to find her a suitable husband.
Yeah.
So that she can grow up with standards and attend proper functions.
What the fuck? Excuse me?
Yeah, you're talking about like selling off your daughter to marriage the instant she's born, but whatever. And then Bristol, the numbers guy, comes in and he's like, oh, I hope she's good at numbers.
I'm the numbers guy.
It's his only dialogue.
He adjusts his glasses and goes, I hope that she's good with mathematics.
But I hope she doesn't take on my small dick because I'm a nerd.
Yeah. Oh my God. And Kaysen, of course, doesn't want to go see the fucking baby. He's just like, I don't give a fuck.
Probably turned out to be a David Steele motherfucker.
Yeah, but not be a David Steele looking honky ass.
And information is just constantly repeated. Like in that paragraph where it's talking how Jayla only picked Kaysen because he was nice to look at. Like 3 lines down, it's talking about the exact same thing again. And it's like, with Kaysen, Jayla was physically attracted. Kaysen was tall, but not huge, and was muscular without being too bulky, thanks to the cardio he always did. Kaysen had an exotic look to him, like most phantoms. He had snow white hair and light gray eyes. Like, ooh, he's so handsome. He's so exotic. And then it even goes on to say, like, Kaysen admitted to himself that Jayla was far more talented in bed than his dead wife was.
Oh my God, yeah.
She wasn't scared to take charge and seemed excited every time. And it's like, is everyone in this book just a brain-dead asshole?
Yeah.
And they are.
You just cannot have a story where no one's relatable. You just, you can't do it. Like, you have to have some sort of connection to somebody. Otherwise, you're like, I don't give a fuck about any of these people. I hope they all die because all they care about who's the buffest, fittest boy who with the biggest dick.
Yeah, and I don't care if Kaysen is happy in his marriage because I hate him.
Yeah, I hate him. Like,
oh my God.
So I also wanted to talk about the political setup of the story. Now, in the traditional sense, you might give a very, very, very obvious reason for one country to attack another, right? In a very basic sense, you can do territorial gains, you can do cultural differences, religious differences. They do bring up religion in this at one point, except for the fact that when he's training some warriors, he's like, there was one guy who was pretty good with a fighting staff because his religion has a fighting staff as one of their tenets. And I was like, what, just a fighting staff is just a tenet in that religion? And you've never brought up religion in this whole story, and you're just going to drop that one on me, and I'll just take it. Like, I was like, why add religion into it at all? And so unfleshed out, he just says religion.
Yeah, no single idea is given any sort of in-depth view except
for the relationship.
Yeah, the whole like polyamorous nature of their society's marriage system.
And it's frustrating because you really don't need much, and you don't even need to explain it. It doesn't have to be part of the character's story why the countries are fighting, but at the very least, because we're dealing with characters like the king and the duke and the archmage, and they're all people that should be making these decisions, and there's no reason they ever attacked the other kingdom. They just attacked them.
Yeah.
And there's no reason they attacked the other people, the Telfarians or whatever. There's no reason they attack them. They're just like, we should really attack them.
Yeah.
And then they get into a war with them.
There is nothing to setting up any of this stuff. They're just like, we need Kaysen to go off to war so that he can meet the trainers and they can ask him about his wife. Like, that's the reason they go to war.
Yeah. And so the Telfarians are immune to magic, and then they discovered that. And I fucking hated this one part where Kaysen is doing some military shit. He's like in the woods at night, and he breaks into the enemy encampment, and and steals a book from the spy master.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't even know about this book until he teleports into the camp, and then he hears a mage saying, like, "Oh, my book!
My book!"
Yeah, and that alerts him to, there's a book, I should take it, because that guy seems worried about it.
Yeah.
And he takes it, and he gets it back to the kingdom, and it's a list of all the spies in the Tefaran kingdom, and this wins them the war, and it's like, great fucking plot point, really.
Yeah, it's just a book with all the names of every secret agent that's working on the other side, with their names, where they are, how much money they've been given, and it's just like, what the fuck? It just didn't even need that at this point. You just seen Kaysen Vixen with his fucking flesh sword, and he'll just fucking kill everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and his flesh sword, when he's just sitting there brooding, because he's such a mysterious badass, he just materializes his dagger into his hand and then grips it and then disappears it again. He's just such a cool fucking dude.
Yeah. It's so bad. And so the Telfarians are supposedly immune to magic. He discovers that it's the peppers that do it, and then it's like so insulting that you have the Spy Master book and the peppers. Like, why add that shit in? Like, you're just making it even worse and worse with everything and then you've got these MacGuffins.
Yeah, as if we needed another way for Kaysen to be invincible.
Yeah.
As like, have this stupid pepper shit where like now he's immune to magic and can see in the dark. But so let's talk about the ending, specifically how it ends, because the actual ending of the book takes place in an epilogue. Why? I don't know, and it doesn't actually matter.
Yeah, I think it matters, just generally speaking. Hey, if you're a budding author out there trying to write your first stories and things like that, don't put the fucking end of the book in the epilogue. The epilogue comes after the end of the book. Come on!
Yeah, an epilogue is something you put after the conflict has resolved.
Yeah.
But the conflict isn't resolved at all. In fact, the book just seems to end mid-paragraph.
Yes.
At some point, the plot evolves where Kaysen gets enough money from like being in this war that he now has as much or more money than his wife. And so he's no longer bound by being the lesser person in the family, and he can get a divorce if he wants. And so, of course, Kaysen and like 9 other people are all talking about his marriage life.
Yeah, of course. It's the most important thing.
As if it's any of their problem. And he's like talking with the other husbands and Jayla's sisters and Jayla's sisters' husbands, and they're all there. They're all talking about Kaysen. And they're all talking about, so will you get a divorce and all this stuff. And Jayla's dad is like talking to him about, oh, you could get this divorce if you want. And Kaysen says, well, you know, Jalen doesn't mind our partnership. I make her good money with our investments, and I attend whatever functions Ian refuses to. And Jayla's dad is like, there's still no passion there, and that's what she wants. Would you seriously give up your right to Kara and Aaron, her kids, who aren't even Kaysen's? And someone else chimes in. She's like, help me understand. You often do things as a family. There's just nothing physical involved. Like, this is at the end of the book, and they're still going over, like, other people getting involved. Oh, but you guys don't get physical? And then the last 2 lines of the fucking book before the epilogue are between Kaysen and Jayla's dad. And Jayla's dad says, this is a hard enough conversation to have as her father, and you seem content with the way things are. So is she, Kaysen said. If I wanted to leave, I could have done so 100 times. I don't care if I have the riches around me or not. I think you just like to meddle in my business.
The end.
And then the next page is an epilogue. That's not an ending!
That's not an ending. That doesn't end... It doesn't even end that conversation.
No! That's like the middle of a conversation.
Yeah, but I just want to say that I don't think this conversation will ever end. This is Kaysen's life. Like, this is all he talks about.
Yeah, not to mention, it's the same fucking conversation we've seen them having for the whole book.
Since the beginning of the book, yeah. Literally, the book starts out, he's already married to this lady.
Yeah.
It's not as if you go see the progression of it, or like, you don't see him get captured, you don't see any of that. It's just him waking up and he's like, God, I hate my wife. Like, hate my wife, hate my life.
Yeah, the plot does not evolve at all from, like, Kaysen's married. He doesn't like his marriage. And everyone around him just wants him to be nice to Jayla. And he's like, fuck Jayla.
Bitch, yeah.
And, like, that's how it stays the whole time. So all this dialogue about this thing, it's just the same. It's literally the same.
Yeah.
And not to mention, that's not an ending to a book. But that conversation leads you to think that Kaysen could leave if he wanted to. But he's just going to stay because he has a comfy life, and like Jayla has finally left him alone. But then the epilogue starts, and Kaysen has already left his wife. It's the opposite of what the conversation they just had would suggest.
Yeah. Now, during the book, if you really care to know, it's not really relevant to his relationships, but the Duke murders the king among quite a few other people, all these side characters, which all just revolve around Kaysen's relationship conversation. And so 7 years go past, he goes to finally get this Duke, who's styled himself as the new king of Voxia, because the kingdoms have split up again. He goes and easily sneaks in. Very, very just teleports through all the fucking walls, go by all the guards, of course.
Yeah, like slices up every guard, no problem, easy peasy. He's on the pepper.
Like, why even wait that long? What's the danger to you?
None.
Sorry again, if you can just teleport and murder. So why did you wait this whole... Like, it's not as if his defenses were really that low. He was sitting in a fucking castle, and so he breaks in while he's in a bath, and he's about to take him out. And then, who would it be to bust around the corner other than... his dead wife.
Oh my god.
What a twist. And the Duke and the lady, Carla, is it Carla?
Who cares?
Who cares? Had like a child, and this is such a twist. And just as he's about to bring the sword down on top of Duke Nathan, the wife comes in and stops him with her own phantom blade, you know, and it's like, oh, wow. No, it's not like that. It's like, come on, let's get this book over with.
Yeah, and then there's pages of dialogue of them talking.
I wanted to have a baby, and like, I thought you were happy with your new wife.
Yeah, Kaysen's previous wife's logic. Okay, I'm gonna read you the actual line.
You're like rubbing your forehead, like the logic behind this. Is there
Kaysen?
Can I pull some logic out of this?
Can I siphon some logic? Because there's none here. Kaysen is talking to who he thought was his dead wife, but she's actually alive. She stayed with the Duke, who killed Kaysen's parents, and Kaysen was married off to this Jayla girl, who he hates. And Carly is making this argument to him, and she's saying, yeah, but that Saucian girl was making you happy. You were rich and do as much training as you wanted. You never wanted me. You barely touched me once you found out I was pregnant. It was the perfect situation. You could work out as much as you wanted and didn't have to deal with a wife constantly wanting to spend time with you.
That makes me think that whoever wrote this, Whiskey Flowers, your perfect life is working out and not being disturbed by your annoying partner. That's what I get from that. That's what I take. Because you styled this action hero. It's not in a way that Kaysen has these flaws about him, that he only cares about working out.
Yeah.
That's like a good thing in the book. That's like, wow, like he only cares about working out. And then everyone acknowledges it as if it's the end of all goals.
It's to like have nothing to do, no one to annoy you, so you have all the time in the world to like
pump out, get your swole on,
shatter pickaxes. Okay, and then he kills the Duke. Then there's a scene break within the epilogue.
Yeah.
And it's been a while. Kaysen is in some tavern, and lo and behold, Jayla shows up and is like, hey, Kaysen, you know, you got your revenge now. Do you want to come back and live with me? And he's like, sure.
Yep.
The end.
Wow. Wow. What a tale.
I'm not even going to analyze this. I'm not going to analyze how, like, that's completely contrary to everything the book has spent its time on doing, because I don't want to talk about it anymore.
No, it doesn't deserve it.
I hate this book. This book is a goddamn David Steele motherfucker.
Yes, it needs to get the pit knocked out of it big time.
I'm going to need to take some pepper to read.
Yeah, you need some pepper resistance.
To make me immune to the stupidity of this book.
So we've got this terrible detachment from reality. We've got terrible, unrealistic dialogue. We have terrible, terrible exposition about things that don't matter. We've got a terrible plot and storyline. We've got terrible character interactions. We've got basically nothing happening in the scenes except for people standing around and talking. And, you know, I feel like we should start rating books. And we should give this one a 0 out of 10. 0 stars out of 10.
I will say, there is a few things that get me laughing about this book, though. So I'll give it a couple points.
Every fucking thing is the same. Like, every scene is the same. Jayla will be like, all right, okay, so can you please come with me to this thing? we have a meeting with the king, or we have a social event. Please come with me and please behave yourself. And he's like, I don't want to go. And he's like, well, too bad, you're coming with me.
Yeah, he's like a brooding teenager, yeah.
Yeah, and then they go, and Kaysen is like, first person he talks to, instant beef, instant fight. Yeah. And then, like, he's talking mad shit, and everyone's like, yo, chill the fuck out, or we're going to, like, magic you to death. And he's like, oh, do it to me. Like, see what happens. Like, see what happens. Any David Steele-looking motherfuckers.
Yeah. He's just like, fuck you. I'm on the pepper, bitch.
I'll fuck you up. And then Jailer is just like, Vix, come. Like, sorry about this, everyone. He doesn't know how to behave. And then they take him away. Like, and it's... You're like, yo, I don't care if your family was killed in the previous war. You just behave your fucking self. These people didn't do shit to you. Oh, man. It's so...
Goddamn.
So, if you're wondering how this author lacks originality, reading the title... I was going to read out all the names of his books.
Can we at least mention the name of another main character in one of his books?
Jonathan Thunder!
Yeah, he's got a book called, like, The Mage of Thunder or something. The character's name is Jonathan Thunder.
But all the books are exactly the same. I'm looking at the Blood Blade right now. The Fail army has invaded the kingdom of Azad. The fight would have been evenly matched if there were not for the elite troops the Fail had on their side, the unarmored. And they're just like super badasses. And then the Charmcaster, the Duke of the Glades, John Duncan, has always done the good things for the kingdom. Like, oh my god, I can't. Oh, but what about the Dragon Mage? Oh, it's another John Thunder. Oh, that's the Night Mage too.
Yeah, you've got the Night Mage, and then the Dragon Mage, the Night Mage too.
But I thought Jonathan Thunder was in the Thunder Mage. So how is he in the Dragon Mage? Because there's only the Night Mage 1 and 2. The Night Mage 1 and the Night Mage 2, the Dragon Mage. And then there's the Lightning Mage, which is a different book. But it also has Jonathan Thunder. But, there's John and then Jonathan. Maybe they're brothers?
Who cares? I want to read the author's note at the end of The Blade of Voxia. So it says, thanks, reader. Like you always rock. You should have gotten this book for under $1. If you paid more, you got robbed.
Yeah, mate, we got robbed. We got fucking robbed and it wasn't the price.
Yeah, The Blade of Voxia is like $1 or 10 cents on Amazon. So yeah, I got robbed by the author's own measure. It says, I have had Kaysen going around in my mind since 2017. It was one of those books I pick up and put right back down. Boy, me too, brother. Like,
yeah, I'm never picking it up again.
If you pirated this book, I still have love for you. So a little about what is going on with me. Lightning Mage 2 is about finished. There has been so much fuss about it, I had to do it. Where? A companion book in the same universe is also finished, but as of right now, it doesn't have a name. The very small but very vocal fans of my vampire book will be happy to know that I have also just about finished the sequel as well. It really didn't sell well, but the 4 of you left enough emails that I went ahead and wrote another anyway.
Oh.
I am working on getting a website. It will be a simple thing, and once I do, I don't mind putting my books up there for all to see what goes on in my mind. Until then, hit me up at flowersnovels@gmail.com.
I also wanted to make a quick note as perhaps one of the final things we say about this book. Now, there are a lot of reviews, most of them 5 stars, of course. Of course, you would give this book 5 stars. And there are some 1 stars of people who actually unfortunately bought his book and unsurprisingly disappointed with it. But there was one book I found which sums up, I think, all the books in total. Titled Same Theme, Different Characters, Strong Male Lead Character Who Gets Trapped into Marriage. This is the last story I read from this author. I don't get the repeated storyline of forcing the strong male character into relationships. Strong male gets emasculated and must accept woman forced on him to be able to have a life. There. Thank you for that very helpful review. Thank you so much. That's a 5-star review.
Yeah, that's a 5-star review right there.
And that's on a different book. That's on the Night Mage.
So it's literally the same thing.
Man gets emasculated and forced into a marriage. Like, what is that? And why are people writing books that are so styled as fantasy? And I mean fantasy. I just mean, like, not as a sexual or a relationship issue. Like, it's so clearly not about that on the cover in the synopsis. And then, obviously, what you get in every single book is just this forced marriage tribe.
It's so deceiving. You're tricking me into thinking I'm going to read a war-themed political intrigue fantasy with, like, a magic warrior. But it's just marriage life fantasy.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Not only that, but there's like 9 of them. And what is the interest in that theme of invincible man gets emasculated? I guess you could say that it's a commentary on how being super badass, like you can still be brought down to, a lower level.
Yeah.
But Kaysen can leave anytime he wants. The plot point of he's trapped in this marriage isn't a thing because he can leave whenever he wants.
He can literally teleport through the walls.
Yeah, he has a cushy life being married to this rich girl and has no real reason to leave. So he's not trapped there at all.
If you're setting up a story like that, shouldn't you have sympathy for the main character? Shouldn't you be like, oh man, this guy's in this fucking forced relationship. This sucks. I can't leave because of X and X and X reasons, But that's not this. In this story, you're thinking, oh my god, Case and Vix, I fucking hope you end up getting killed by your wife in your sleep because you are such an asshole. Like, if you want to talk about those sort of relationships, those sort of dynamics, you have to have some sort of sympathy or some sort of empathy for the main character because otherwise, what's the point? I don't give a fuck if Case and Vix is happy or if he is unhappy because he's an asshole.
Yeah. So that was The Blade of Voxia. Whatever. That's all I have to say about it.
Move past it.
Yeah. But what are we going to be looking at next time, Kim?
Now, this book I am genuinely excited about.
We say that every time.
It is a massive pirate adventure that is going to take us on a journey over the 7 seas, no doubt.
What is it called?
It is called The Pirates of Tropica Dark Wind. Now, it looks good. I just want to say the first line of the synopsis. Known thief and all-around scoundrel Nicholas Sunblade has shed his jaded past to take up the art of the blade.
Nicholas Sunblade, huh?
Well, as far as stupid names go, I thought Jonathan Thunder was bad. Nicholas Sunblade. I really hope that Darkwind's going to be just, like, hilarious.
It's our first pirate adventure, really. So that means it'll probably end up being a book about knitting.
Yes. I don't even want to speculate. I don't want to speculate on the horrors that could...
It's not going to be about pirates. We know that already.
No. It'll be about, like, the efficacy of... We just read a book about the efficacy of multi-partner relationships. Like, and I didn't think it was going to be that. I had no idea. Okay. If you want to write a harem story... Just put harem story on the front. Don't try to trick us, please.
Yeah, I'll give Kyle Kenzie one thing. The guy who wrote Apocalypse Deception, all his books were like Space Harem or like the harem at the end of the galaxy.
How?
Thank you for at least telling me so that I know not to buy it.
Yeah. Oh, man. Thank you, everyone, for listening and supporting the show. And please, if you can, support us on Patreon, and doubly so, share our podcast with your friends. It's a huge help, and thank you to all of those who already do that. If you have a book you want us to look at, share it with us on one of our platforms, and we'll consider it for the show. Thanks!